This is the Musical Miles podcast, and I am here in Challis, Idaho, with Mr. Django Walker. Welcome to the podcast, Django.
My pleasure to be here.
Hey, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule. We're here at the Braun Brothers, the BBR reunion in Challis, Idaho. This is the 40th annual.
Yes.
How crazy is that?
That is insane. That is me in a festival. I'm 43, so
there you go. There you go. I think I own socks older than you. So, but you've had a lifetime of music. You know that the crazy thing, and we met actually. So I got to tell the backstory real quick. So we knew we were coming to the BBR, and we wanted to set up some artist interviews, and so I reached out to your management, and got an email back 6 o'clock the other morning, and I'm like, this is great. Django said, yeah. So we're trying to, message back and forth and make sure we're going to be able to, meet up with each other and figure out how to get this done. And I didn't have a contact number for you. So I roll in here last night to the Roadhouse. We are at the Roadhouse,
yes, we are.
here at the Challis Roadhouse, thanks to the owners.
Ben?
No, Andy and Mia. Yes,
that's right.
Baker. Wonderful people, and thank them for letting us use this and be able to do the podcast here. But anyway, I rolled in, and you're sitting out there on the picnic table talking to Andy, and I'm like, hey, Django Walker, I'm Byron Duffin, and I'm supposed to interview you for the podcast. And I said, great, and we visited for a minute, and I go, you said your manager said, well, how are you going to meet up with him? He goes, hey, it's a little town. We'll see each other somewhere. What are the odds?
I said, I guarantee it. We did it within 5 minutes.
5 minutes and running into each other. Yep. But so anyway, cool. So normally you ask somebody, what's your musical journey? How'd you get started in this business?
Yeah.
But we know, well, for those of you who don't know, Django is the son of Jerry Jeff Walker.
Yes.
Legendary Jerry Jeff Walker,
yes.
who was a phenomenal songwriter, singer-songwriter, and performer. And he wrote one of my all-time favorite songs, and a song that I've been learning to play is Mr. Bojangles.
Well,
I love that song.
I'll have to teach you some tricks for it.
I would love that. Any tips, because I started to play the guitar 50 years ago and didn't stick with it.
Okay.
And regret it every day. Now, but in December, I decided I'm going to force myself to learn to play, and I have played every day. My fingers attest to
getting
that.
the calluses.
I play an hour to 2 hours a day and absolutely love this and love that song. But
That's awesome.
I've been a Jerry Jeff fan most of my life, right? I mean, first time I ever heard him play that song was just
It's a timeless classic for sure.
Yeah. But so anyway, so you were born into this industry, right? Essentially.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
My mother's been his manager, my dad's manager for 40 plus years of his career, and we were a musical household. She worked from home and raised us, and he went out on the road and played music. And
how many siblings do you have?
One sister.
Okay. Is she musical at all?
Not a bit.
So this is crazy to me, because we're here at the BBR and we talk about that in the musical families. There were 2 kids in your family. Your dad was a great musician, great artist. Your mom supported him and really involved in the industry. And your sister's got no interest in it.
Not a bit.
And the Brauns, there's 4 of them.
Yeah.
And every one of them are great musicians. They're great artists. They've got great voices. And
I wonder if they had a daughter, if she would be, I'm guessing so.
Yeah.
But
did Muzzy make those boys do that? Or did they love it? I think they love it. I've watched them for years.
I think like my dad did. My dad forced me to learn it, but then gave me the reins to be like, look, and he always told me, he's like, don't do this if you don't love it, because it is the hardest business in the world. And it is.
Sure.
Like, it is just don't make any money until you do.
Right.
And it's like, you're singing songs for people and they're talking and they're songs that you love and things like that. And so my dad was like, you have to love this. And so he never pushed it. And then I just started like going to shows and seeing the energy in the crowd and the thing. And I just caught the bug. And I do genuinely love it. But I think that these guys got pushed to it. But then at some point you have to love it, right?
Well, I would assume so. You can't just do this mechanically just because Dad did it, right?
No.
I look at Ray Wylie's son Lucas, right?
Yeah.
A hell of a guitar player, and it seems like Lucas loves it, right? And you know those guys well. That's the other cool thing, is where you grew up and how you grew up, and you didn't know these guys were famous. That
No.
were sitting at your kitchen table, right?
No.
Like Guy Clark and oh my gosh, now I'm going to draw some blanks. But you
Townes, VanZant,
Townes,
everybody.
VanZant, yeah. I mean, legends.
The one I remembered the most too is the office phone was like in our house,
right.
and so I go over to the office phone's ringing. I'm like, "Hello, Trident Tree Music," and they was like, "Hey, is Jerry Jeff there?" I said, "I think so. Let me just go and check. Can I ask who's calling?" He goes, "Yeah, this is Garth." And I went, "Oh, hold on," and he holds the phone. And I go, "Dad, Garth's on the phone?" And he picks up the phone. He goes, "Garth Brooks, you son of a gun!" And I was like, "Did I just talk to Garth Brooks?"
Yeah,
It was like, it was just like, it's like right next to our kitchen, I'm
Right,
like, hello,
right.
yeah.
Well, share the story real quick. You shared a story with Shanda and I last night about your dad or someone coming over to the house and having dinner.
Hoyt
Axton. I love this
Hoyt
story.
Axton. Hoyt's a big guy, and he's Mama Mae Axton, who wrote Elvis,
Right.
songs for Elvis, and he comes to dinner, and my mother's got a big thing of broccoli, and she's going around to every plate dropping broccoli off, and I'm about 8 years old, maybe 9. And she gets over to Hoyt, and she goes like this, and he goes, oh, Susan, now the only thing green I eat are M&Ms. Now move along. And I didn't know who it was. I just knew the hero that was the guy who only eats green M&Ms.
Absolutely.
Was it an iconic songwriter?
You said, Mom, I didn't know that was an option, right?
Yeah.
I didn't.
And
know
it wasn't an
It
option.
wasn't an option at your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you got some great people and great examples, and like we just talked, Ray Wylie Hubbard, who wrote the song Up Against the Wall, Redneck Mother.
Absolutely.
And what a great song. Shanda had that story she shared with you last night about but her mother was a songwriter in Arizona, and they went to a showcase.
Yes.
And your dad was there, and she remembers him playing that song, and
Yep.
she pictured the whole bar and probably what she was wearing, because she's got a great memory like that.
That's great.
But what a great experience. And I never did get to see your dad play, but I loved his music from the first time I heard it. So
Well, I'm sorry you didn't get to. He was the best.
yeah. Pissing in the Wind, one of my all-time favorites as well.
Oh.
And I'm sure he loved to play that. Right?
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
I remember he gave me one of those, like, don't write it unless you want to play it for the rest of your life speeches.
Sure.
Because, he wrote that drunk. Ray told a story that they started it. They were going to fly up to Dallas and see Willie, and there was a bunch of storms. And somebody was like, let's just take the car.
Right.
And they said, Ray, you go to the store and you buy a case of beer. I'll drive us up there. And they're driving up there and they're having a couple beers. I mean, it's
Back
probably
in the
not
day
what
when
you should
could
do.
Drink
Yep.
a case of beer while you're driving.
Back in those days, different world.
Yeah.
And they said they pull over and the storm's blowing wind. And my dad went out to pee and he's like, look, Ray, I'm pissing in the wind. And he goes, I'm going to write that. And Ray was like, okay. Never thought he would, but that's how the song came out.
I heard Ray tell a story about Snake Farm and some of the other songs that he's written.
Yeah.
You're like, and his wife's like, you're never going to record that, right? You're not going to play that live anywhere. It's just a joke, right? And they're some of his biggest hits.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Same
Same thing.
So obviously your dad was a huge influence on your musical career.
For sure.
Who else? Like Guy Clark, Gary P. Nunn,
Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett.
He was around a lot. I mean, I go all over the spectrum, I mean, Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty.
Wow.
The songwriters were covered in my mind, like, because of my dad.
Right.
They were always around. His birthday weekend was a big deal in Austin, and he would invite his friends to come. So I met Bruce Robeson. I met all these guys. I mean, Pat was one of my guys. Like,
Right.
I was engulfed in that. And then, my musical side went all over the place. You're in high school and it's rap. And there's Notorious B.I.G. is an influence of mine.
Sure.
Only because of the way he rhymes and how he puts words together in this melodic way. I just learned from a little bit of everything, and you pick and it becomes a stew that makes you, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
So.
Well, obviously, there's all kinds of things that influence us in our day-to-day lives, right?
For sure.
So let's talk a little bit about your songwriting process and some of your successes with songwriting. You mentioned a couple of guys that actually have cut some songs that you wrote, which is really cool.
Yep.
Pat Green, as well as Jimmy Buffett, right?
Alabama.
Yeah. That's awesome.
A lot of Texas guys. I've been blessed to, have Kevin Fowler and Josh Abbott and some of those guys. And but what I started doing was I stopped giving people songs because then I didn't, like I said, there's nothing worse than when I would go out and sing Texas on My Mind. Somebody would be like, oh, Pat Green's song. You're like, listen, dude.
I wrote that.
Yeah, she flew over and broke my heart, bro. Okay? Like, I lived it.
Yeah, right.
And they're telling you that. Or then you play something and they go, oh, yeah, nice Jimmy Buffett song. You're like, dude, it's my song.
Yeah, I wrote it.
It is a Jimmy Buffett song, and
Yeah.
it's great to have, but it's my song.
Yeah,
Like,
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about Texas on My Mind, because I heard that story. I love that. You were going to school in London, right?
in Liverpool.
Liverpool, okay, in England. So let's tell us that story.
I was going to school over there, and it was spring break, my first year over there, and 11 of my friends were coming over that were all in college for their spring break.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend was still in high school. It was her spring break. She was a senior, and I was like, hey, you should come over, and they come over 2 days early, and let's spend 2 days together, and then 11 of my buddies are flying over, and it's just going to be, it's 18 drinking age. We're all 18. We're just going to have a blast. We're going to be big old Texans in a bar. It's going to be awesome. She flies over, tells me she doesn't want to be with me anymore. And she's like, I'm going to spend these 2 days with you, and then I'm going to fly back to Texas. And I was like, what the hell? I don't even want you here. And so then I had to spend 2 days, and then she flew away, and 11 of my buddies came in, and I was like, little heartbroken bump on a log, and they were like, dude, this is our spring break, and you're literally weeping in a corner, the whole time.
Yeah. And
they left, and I wrote that song, started that song like the day after they left, and was just like, this sucks, and the only way I can do it, my dad, very prolific, was so good about being like, I'm calling him, and I'm heartbroken, and he's like, write about it. That's when you're supposed to write about it.
Right.
Is that moment. Like, I know it sucks for you, but put it on paper.
Yeah.
Feel it out. And I just remember that. So I started writing it. And then, then I record it for a school project because I was at a music school.
Right.
I record it. My songwriting teacher tells me it's the worst song he's ever heard in his life.
What a bonehead.
I take it back to Texas. My dad had 100 CD disc changer back in those days. Pretty fancy stuff,
Right.
And it's in the 100 CD disc changer. Pat comes over to dinner, like he always did with my folks, with his wife Corey, and all of a sudden I hear that bank, bank, and I'm like, Dad, shut it off. And my dad's like, no. Let Pat hear it. Hey, this is Django's little song he wrote, heartbroken little tune. We get to the chorus, and Pat starts singing the chorus by the last one. And he's like, play it again. My dad's like, gets up, plays it again. Pat's like, play it one more time. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? Like, Pat's like, can I take it with me? My dad's like, sure. So then Pat takes it with him. He's like, hey, I'm playing Willie's Picnic. This is like the second. He's like, I'm playing Willie's Picnic on the 4th. Will you come to Willie's Picnic with me? He gives it to his band, and he plays it that day on stage at Willie's Picnic. And he gets me. He's like, hey, you're just kidding. I'm going to cut this song. And he plays it for the crowd, and the crowd, they don't really go crazy because they don't know the song.
Right.
But cuts it, and the rest is history,
Yeah, ended up number one in Texas music, right?
It was for a long time.
Long time, like 16 weeks or something.
That's
Maybe
debatable.
longer.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I don't know. Like I always say 16. Pat said it was more the other night when I played with him, and he said it was more. But I was like, all right.
And then it ended up in the top 40, right?
It did.
In
It did.
Country
Billboard.
Billboard top 40?
Yeah, I think it was his first. It was his first Billboard charting song.
Love that. And then tell them the rest of the story. You go back to Liverpool, to the school.
Yep.
And
I knew I was going to come back and play music, so I highlighted the number one on the Texas music chart at the time, and I highlighted it, and I told my songwriting teacher, maybe you should take some songwriting lessons from me, and I pinned it to his door, and I flew back to Texas.
Big silver bird and came back to Texas.
Yes, I did.
And played music. Good for you. That is a great story, and I love those kind of stories. So let's talk a little bit about Buffett. Now, Pat Green, let me back up.
Mm-hmm.
We love Pat Green. Seen Pat probably 6 or 8 times. Got to meet him one time in Jackson Hole. Just a cool dude.
He's awesome.
Just love his music. So
he's awesome.
We saw him. He came and played in Idaho Falls, and there wasn't 40 people there. They didn't know who he was. He's selling out stadiums in Texas.
Yeah.
And nobody in Idaho Falls knew who he was because he wasn't on the radio.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
So,
of course.
But I've just loved him for years. But let's talk about Jimmy Buffett. So
Yeah.
Jimmy Buffett credited Jerry Jeff Walker for a big part of his successful career, right?
It was 100%. No, I mean, there'd be no. I mean, Buffett told me personally, like I was at one of his shows, and we were, he was so kind to play my song at his shows, and one night we're just hanging out after the show, and he goes, "Do you know that your dad was the reason that there is a Jimmy Buffett?" And I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Literally, he took me to Key West for the very first time." He said, "I was a radio, like a
DJ or
like a record promoter guy.
Oh,
like he
okay.
would go work singles for a
Okay.
record label in Nashville." And he said, "Your dad comes to town," and I met him because I was working his label. And he said, "We go out and howl till the moon." And his first wife, gets all pissed off at Jimmy, and my dad kind of he's like, he crashes on the couch and but wakes up to a hellstorm. And my dad's like, "Look, man, I don't mean to cause any trouble, but hey, man, if you're ever in Miami, I got a place in Coconut Grove. Look me up." So 6 months goes by, Jimmy gets divorced. And he's like, "I'm not staying in Coconut Grove. I'm not staying in Nashville, I can tell you that." He said, "Oh, Jerry Jeff gave me this card and said, look me up anytime I'm ever
Right.
in Miami." So I said, "I'm going to Miami." So he calls up, gets a payphone in Miami, calls up my dad. He says, "Hey, man, I'm Jimmy Buffett, and, I'm here in Coconut Grove." He said, "Call you if you ever look up." He said, "Perfect." He said, "I'm throwing a party tonight, and all the musicians in the area are coming in. Why don't you just come on by?" And Buffett ended up living with him for 2 months after that, and he met Fred Neil and all these amazing artists. And Buffett was like, "I was hooked. Like, I caught the bug, you know?"
Yeah.
And then he said, "I was in love with Coconut Grove." He said, "Your dad came in and was like, 'Hey, man, I'm flying the roost. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to this cool little town called Key West, man. I think you're going to love it." And that's when they were in that 47 Packard. And Buffett was like, "I think I'm going to stay in Coconut Grove." And my dad was like, "I really think you're going to like Key West." So they drive down in that Packard, and they got to Key West. And I think, what's the song where I found me a home, I think is the Buffett song.
Okay.
I think it's called "I Found Me a Home."
Yeah.
And he wrote it that day when they got in, and the rest is kind of history.
Well, listen, I'm an Idaho farm boy, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of a cowboy. I love this country, but we love Florida. We love Key West. We've been to Mile Zero a couple
pretty
of times.
awesome.
We love Miami South Beach. We just love that
I mean,
area.
Key West
we love
is
the
pretty
culture.
awesome. Yeah.
We love the music. We just love the vibe. But let's talk about your song that Buffett cut.
Something about a boat.
Something About a Boat. That's a great song.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about that.
We wrote it on a songwriting trip. We used to have a house in Belize, and I wanted to try and break in. I was moving to Nashville, and I had my best friend live there and was a very successful writer. And I was like, "Hey, man, I want to break into the Nashville writing scene." He goes, "So you know how you do it? You take a writing trip to somewhere beautiful, and you invite a bunch of really great songwriters on vacation, but you write."
Okay.
And so it was me and James Otto. I don't know if you ever heard James Otto, but he wrote In Color for Jamie Johnson.
Okay.
With Jamie. He had a big hit in the 90s called Just Got Started Loving You.
Okay.
So he comes down, Eric Pasley,
Yeah.
who wrote Even If It Breaks Your Heart
Yeah.
and all these songs. A guy named Jed Hughes, who's like Keith Urban, and Keith Urban's guitar player.
Okay.
And they all come down. And the first night we go out, we're drinking Goombay Smashes, and we're watching the Super Bowl. And as we get more and more drunk, we stop watching the Super Bowl, and we turn and look at the ocean, and there's about a $250,000 catamaran and a rickety old sailboat.
Right.
And we're all staring at the sailboat. I just looked at my best friend. I said, "It's that thing that we stare at, that sailboat, right? Like, that's..." And he's like, "Yeah, you know exactly why. It's like, it's got all the character. The paint's chipping off of it. The mast is leaning to the right a little bit. But that's the boat that's got the stories, right?
Right.
The new boat hasn't done anything yet."
Right.
And so, and he just turned over me. He goes, "Man, there's just something about a boat, isn't it?" And I remember both of us like perked up, and we were like, we left the bar, all of us, and we were like, "Hey, dude, we got a song." And we left, and then one of them had brought like an old 1950s Gibson down, and we wrote about a guitar. And then this dog had wandered in from the beach, and it became like the house dog for the week. And he was laying down there next to us. And so we're writing something about a boat, and then we're like, "What are we going to do next?" And somebody points at the guitar. He's like, "What about something about an old guitar?" And then we got to the last verse, and we were like, "What are we going to do?" And all of us, I'll never forget this, all of us looked down, and we're like, Oh, we're riding about that damn dog.
Yeah. How cool is that? I actually got to play a 1950 Gibson J45 a couple months ago.
Oh, you did?
Checked into a hotel that had them. They loaned them out.
Oh my God!
I had it in my room.
Is that a banner? Is that a banner guitar? Does it have the banner on the top of it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I have a photo. Well, I'll see if I show you. But anyway, I just love that. I love this. I love the backstories. That's the thing about music, that we all hear the songs, right?
Right.
But we don't know the backstory. I wanted to know.
Yeah.
How do you write that song? And that's a great story.
You know, real life's a beautiful thing if you can get out of its way.
Yeah.
On the way. But, life happens and you just kind of write about it. That's what my dad did,
Loved it.
I remember when I left to move to Nashville, I had my golden retriever in the front of my car. I had my Tahoe packed with all the seats down and nothing in the back. And right as I'm pulling out of the driveway, my dad's just running down the driveway, holding his hands going like this. And he said, "Hey," puts his hand on the side of my car and goes, "Hey, when you're up there in Nashville, go get you a Bojangles." And I just said, "All right," and we hugged, and I drove off, and I called him 7 hours later on the drive, and I was like, "Can I ask you a question? Does that mean you want me to go to New Orleans and get thrown in jail and meet a guy?" And he's like, "If that's what it takes." And that's what he said on the phone, and I went, "Well, shit, then that means go out and live your life, and while you're living life, find these little cherries and try and grab them if you can, and life's going to happen, and make lemonade out of lemons," right?
That's so cool. That just brings it all together, right? Because that's those life experiences that your dad lived, that made him write Bojangles. And I know the backstory a little bit about that.
Yeah,
he was in jail. And
Devil's Backbone Tavern, right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite Todd Snyder songs. Real story.
Yeah.
He's trying to find Lukenbach, Texas, and he can't find it. He gets lost, and he bumps into this Devil's Backbone Tavern. He walks into that bar, and that bartender's like, "Fuck Lukenbach, drink with us." And Todd stayed.
Right.
And if he never goes to try and find Lukenbach, he never gets lost. He never
writes
that.
the song, right? He never has the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Well, listen, this is a busy week for everybody. I know you kind of get to come in and chill. Talk a little bit about, so you perform tomorrow night.
Tomorrow afternoon.
Yep. And you've got Juliana Rankin with you.
Yep.
So we download everybody's music, especially the ones we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And listen to it. We saw you here first time 2 years ago.
Yes.
Was that your first trip to the BBR? Or?
No, I think I did. Well, me and my dad played back here in 2008.
Oh, wow. I wish
something
I'd seen
crazy.
That. Yeah.
And then I think the year before, 3 years ago, was my first. This is my fourth year in a row.
Okay. So we got to see you, and we obviously, and I hate to tell you this, didn't know Django Walker existed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jerry Jeff, but when we found out who you were, we're like, this is going to be cool. So we love that. But so you're going to be on the stage tomorrow with Juliana and
Roger Klein
and the Peacemakers. He's in his band, but he's just coming. Just
acoustic.
Yeah, that's going to be cool. We're really looking.
It's
forward
great.
To that.
I mean, they're both awesome. I've been watching Roger since 2002 in Austin. He would come through, play a little blues bar called Antone's.
Yes,
so
we were in Antone's in January.
I've seen him for forever, and it was just an amazing show, and he's just an entertainer, to a level that I love as an entertainer. And Juliana's just, she's just it. You know what I mean?
She's got a beautiful voice. I know.
And she writes right from the heart.
So
that's what won me over. We were at a campfire in New Braunfels, and she played that "You Don't Have to Miss Me When I'm Gone."
Mm-hmm. I listened to it
and
this morning.
I literally was like, "What are you doing? You're not a campfire. You're an artist.
Right.
We got to get you on things." So I just started putting her on stuff and just throwing her name into pots. When when they said Django and Friends, I always laughed because the first year they were like, "Hey," they called me up and they said, "Hey, if you really want to come back, we'd love to." We always had a thing where we showcased artists, and we think you'd be the perfect person to be the host because, you're a good guy and people seem to like you. And I said, "Awesome." And they go, "But here's the deal. It's going to be called Django and Friends, but we're going to pick your friends." And I said, "Great." I said, there's never, I know the Bronze, and they don't invite somebody that sucks.
Right.
And so finally I was like, the last year I finally called them. I was like, "Guys, I know you're picking, but just take a look at her.
Yeah.
Just here."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Dude, that's awesome."
Oh,
So
perfect.
I'm happy she's here.
Well, we're excited for that. Okay, so any new album plans? You got some big travels?
I put a single out in May. A song called My Hero. I wrote about my dad.
Love that song.
Thank
I
you.
listened to it. Awesome.
Thank you. And then I'm probably doing another one. The record's done. It's been done for 2 years.
Okay.
I just don't know how to release music in this modern world where it's like, make a TikTok and post your lyrics on your social media. And I'm like, put a video of you in a field and I'm like, I just want to write songs and put them out and have people listen to them. Like, I just don't, And so it'll probably be out in the fall, I would think, the whole record.
Awesome.
Like October. It's 13 songs.
Cool.
I wrote 12 of them.
Oh, great.
I recorded a song. If you get a chance, go look up this guy, Channing Wilson.
Okay.
I just tell everybody about him. He's one of my best friends, and he is just a songwriting, singing, comes from the school of our school. Like, when we first met, Channing was like, he hands me the guitar. He's like, play me a Guy Clark song. So I played The Cape.
Love that song.
And then he played Desperados.
Oh, yeah.
And then handed it back to me, and we were like,
LA Freeway.
we were Guy Clark and ourselves. Like, we were just, and I was like, this is my dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if we can go back to back Guy Clark all night, he's my kind of guy. So he wrote a song in there called Trainwreck that I love. It's about a guy being an absolute train wreck.
Yeah.
But other than that, I wrote or co-wrote all the other tracks.
That's so cool. Well, we look forward to that new album release. I love the song "Hero" about your dad. That just really touched me.
Thank you.
So another one that I got to give you a shout out is "That's Just Me."
Oh yeah,
I love that song.
Thank you very much.
There's a lot of cool stuff in there. I love the aisle seat on the airplane. I won't give that up to anybody, right?
I'm the same way.
That one, and then I was listening to it a couple of days ago before we came here, just kind of to get prepped for this because I knew this was coming. But there's a line in there that said something you like a phone call from a friend.
Yeah.
And I literally shut the song off and called my best friend.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. Yeah. I mean, that was true autobiographical. I wrote. I walked into a writer room with this guy's name is Wyatt Durrett, and he 14 number one songs. He's one of my really good friends now. Another buddy of mine who's written a couple hits, and I love writing with him. And I walked into the writing room. I said, guys, I got a title called. I said, That's Just Me. And I said, I don't know. The title first was I Don't Know About You, but that's just me.
Yeah.
And they were like, what does that mean? And I literally looked at my friend and I go, man, I love old Don Williams records and My Eggs on the Sunny Side. And my buddy goes, that's the line. And we just took off, and we were all just bopping stuff back and forth.
I did get to see Don Williams play at Billy Bob's.
Oh, that was awesome.
And I was like, from me to Miss Shanda behind the camera there.
That's the voice.
And it was so incredible. What a
How old was he?
Oh, he was old. This has probably been in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But it was he didn't live a long time past that. But he was such a songwriter and I loved him. He sat up there and he played a song and he'd go, I don't talk much, but he said, if I think of something to say, I'll say it. I just love that. It was such
Gentle
a cool
giant,
experience.
man. That's so great.
Yeah, he was so cool. But so one last thing before we go.
Yep.
Teton Guitars has been gracious to give us a guitar.
Yeah.
If you would just play us a little ditty, anything, whatever. A Guy Clark would be awesome.
Here you go. I'll do this
And
one. I don't have a capo, but we'll just do it. My voice is probably low enough right now, anyways. Yeah, I knew a man, Bojangles, and he danced for you. Worn out shoes, silver hair, a raggy shirt, and baggy pants. He did the old soft shoe and jumped so high, then he landed touchdown. Mr. Bojangles, I'm Mr. Bojangles, 'cause I can dance.
Oh, dude, thank you. That's even better than a Guy Clark. So here you go. I need you to autograph that for me if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
Anywhere on there. That is so cool. This has been such a great experience, Django.
And thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for coming. And we certainly look forward to your show tomorrow night, tomorrow afternoon with Juliana and Roger Klein.
Yep.
And then following you down the road somewhere. We're hoping that the Musical Miles podcast takes us lots of places, and that our paths crossed again. And
we will make it happen.
You know where we want to come? We've been to Texas multiple times. We were in Austin in January, and I've been to Green Hall a couple of times, but I've never seen a show there. And part of this podcast deal is we want to feature venues as well. So we'd love to do a podcast.
Why don't you come down in December?
Okay.
December 7th, I do a tribute show to my dad.
Oh, that would be
It's
awesome.
his band, and I front it, and we sing nothing but Jerry Jeff songs all night in Green Hall.
Oh, that's
So
a
that might
deal.
be it. I don't know.
If this is an invitation from you, I'm
Come
coming.
on. I got you.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
appreciate you a ton.
Yeah.
From Musical Miles Podcast, I'm Byron Duff and Django Walker. We're at the BBR in Challis, Idaho. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you somewhere down the road. Adios.
Adios.